Welcome to another episode of Mortgage Masterminds. I'm Richard Greaser, VP of Marketing at Sales Boomerang and Mortgage Coach. And I'm joined by our guest, Krish Dhokia, he's SVP of Marketing and Business Development at Kind Lending. Welcome. Thanks for joining me, Krish.
Thank you for having me, Richard.
Krish today is going to reveal the one secret that is going to change your business tomorrow and make you a billionaire in the mortgage industry. Just kidding. You're not going to do that.
I might.
Unless you got it.
We'll see what I can come up with.
Yeah, everybody's always looking for that one magic card that's just going to make them an overnight billionaire, right? Well, look, here's a quick plug. In case you haven't heard about Sales Boomerang and Mortgage Coach, you've been living under a rock since 2017. Sales Boomerang notifies a lender the moment one of their borrowers needs a loan, and Mortgage Coach makes the choice very simple and clear for the borrower. And so if you want to hear more about Mortgage Coach or Sales Boomerang, go check us out, salesboomerang.com, mortgagecoach.com. With that, Krish, let's kick it off.
Just do it.
Why don't you just give a little overview of yourself, just quick, a couple minutes, a minute. Talk about where you come from, how you ended up at Kind. You've got a tremendous background in the industry, so take it away.
Sure. I started out years and years and years ago, not telling of my age, really doing lead gen in the real estate as well as the legal world. Everyone needs leads. Kind of did a lot of consulting, worked for some small real estate brokerages in the Atlanta, Georgia market. Found myself in mortgage. Never thought I would, but here I am. Worked in a couple of different retail mortgage companies, worked for Stearns Lending years ago. And so it really had the opportunity to work in both retail, wholesale, working directly with brokers, account executives, retail loan officers, just the whole gamut, right? And then joint ventures as well. Most recently, I was at Fairway, and then now at Kind. And we all know the mortgage industry is a very small space, right? It's you kind of work with everyone at some point in your career, or work again with other people in your career. And find myself at Kind, maybe 100 days ago, something like that. With having worked with at least 75% of the folks here in throughout my career. So it's just been an incredible experience. And what draws me today to an organization like Kind is from a marketer's perspective, just the fun, right? Making mortgage fun again, to changing the narrative and being able to represent well both through messaging and through visual to the audience, right? And we have multitudes of just different segments of audiences here with TPO and with our retail channel. So super excited. Thank you for having me here. I live and breathe this stuff. I wake up in the middle of the night and talk to my wife. It's like, hey, guess what? I had this epiphany, this idea, all the way to whether she likes it or not. I tell her about the mortgage industry because it's that fascinating. Also realize that consumers aren't as fascinated. So, it's that part of that challenge as well.
Well, that's awesome. Success comes from passion in my belief. I think you really care about what you do that extra mile, and you think about it when you're sleeping, you're dreaming about it, you wake up and you're like, ooh, there's a new idea right there. Those kind of folks are the ones that are the most successful. And I think you're recognized as one of the leaders in the industry. I mean, you were just on stage. We were talking about it at Total Expert with KP from PRMG, and you guys were dropping some knowledge. So I just want to give you a chance to plug Kind and the founder, Stearns. You guys in second year of business, $3 billion plus in origination volume. That's pretty impressive.
Sure. I think that, and we were just literally talking before we hopped on about statistics and how you can just throw some stuff out, and but this one's actually pretty true. I mean, with Stearns, I apologize. Kind Lending, founded by Glenn Stearns, has only been on the in the market playing for a little over 2.5 years, and so in 2021, we made a stand, and it was great. Where if you stack us up against the top 100, we were in the bottom 20% or whatever. But we essentially, at 2.5 years old, or 2 years at the time, beating out companies that are at 23 years old, right? And then, just most recently, a lot of organizations are sifting through their employee base with some record number of layoffs, and we're over here growing, right? Kind of lending, you know, uh, just specifically from a marketing team, we're growing, right? We know what we don't know, uh, but we also know that in this unknown, right? This crazy, chaotic uh, marketplace today, right? And with a lot of factors that are influencing the issues, um, we have to be prepared, right? Because when there is a downturn, there's always an upturn as well. And when that happens, are you going to be ready, right? So, from a marketing perspective, as I grow my group and our initiatives and our tactics, we want to make sure that not only are we continuing to market through this downturn, but when that uptick does happen, the organizations that were prepared for that uptick. So, for example, right, in 2020, we hadn't seen a refi market for several years, right, since probably 2015, 2016. And all of a sudden, refi was here. Now, nobody knew the country was going to shut down, but those organizations that had done the legwork, that either had kept their marketing from 2016 in their assets and redone them, the first people to the market with their refi were capturing the refi. Now, there was plenty to share, right?
Hmm.
Let's be honest. But whoever got there first. And so, in this regard, organizations that are preparing their tactics, their approaches, whether they're recruiting in or retaining their employee base, and going out to the consumer and making sure they know that we're here when you're ready. Um, they're the survivors. It's the survival of the fittest.
Krish, I got a question for you. And I've been hearing this from a lot of executives and because they've been hearing it from a lot of their loan officers. And that question is, have we hit the peak in terms of rates going up? And you and I were talking about this before the podcast. We were talking about a post from KP. I'd just like to hear your take on it, because it resonated with you, that post from KP, and me and myself as well.
Sure. I mean, I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, right? I mean, we could do all the math, and I have an accounting background, and I like to kind of think that I know what's going on. But I think you know, with the reference to one of KP's more recent videos, and Dan and Barry Habib when they come out with theirs, even folks like Rob Chrisman and Dave Savage, it's just like I don't pretend, right? Is oftentimes like I feel like sometimes I as a marketer personally want to be really thought provocative and go out to the marketplace and say those things, but I personally don't really know, right? And
Yeah.
I could do all the math and guess and do the fear mongering and all of those types of things, but it's about staying in my lane, which is marketing. I know marketing. I also, any organization, especially like where I'm at with Kind, having those non-siloed type of relationships with the other counterparts on the executive team, right? And allowing them to kind of help navigate as well, right? Because as a marketer, oftentimes where let's go back to the more normal year in a marketing or at an organization in mortgage, where you have your peak seasons, right? Back to the word peak. And we know that those peak seasons, your loan officers or your brokers are just going to be uber busy and they don't ask for a whole lot. And then you have your downtime where it's like October through February in a typical year, which we haven't seen in a very long time. And that's when you're, getting hit up for marketing.
Yeah.
But in times like this, I would imagine, I fortunately do not work at an organization like this, but at some organizations, I imagine that marketing leaders and marketing teams are left to fend uh, for themselves to figure out what's next, right? Unless you have just a ton of initiatives on your roadmap and have a really strategic marketing plan that just fills your day, you're guessing. And so, as far as what's the market going to do, and this is what I referenced earlier, be prepared now, right? Fill that void with those ideas, those tactics. If you find yourself in this lull, which is very rare, right? But if you find yourself in this lull, make time And if you don't, still make time for the strategies, for those tactics. One thing, Richard, that I speak a lot about is flexible marketing plans,
Yep.
right?
Flexible beast,
Be,
I believe you called
yeah,
yourself.
yeah, flexible, being a flexible beast. But from your strategic marketing plan, are you able to pivot quickly, right? Now, the last time, even in more recent years, the last time we had to pivot truly was 2020. Now that was 2 years ago. It's hard to believe that that was 2 years ago, but it was 2 years ago. Now we find ourselves in this environment. Look, the peak, the factor, the peaks factor, right? Whether we've hit it or we're going to come down from it, or if it continues to go up, is not really going to impact. I personally don't think it's going to impact how we market. Sure, your tactics are different, but the factors are the same, right? You have low inventory, you have moving targeted, moving interest rates. You have different products for different days right now. It seems, right? So take what we know and build on it, but being flexible enough from day one to day two, being able to go from say arms to non QM to whatever, right? You have to be able. What's the other one? Two ones.
Yeah.
You have to be able to pivot back and forth. Um, and 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 I think the other disadvantage that marketers have today is they don't know who to ask, or what resources to tap into, because while it might not have impacted your organization yet, if you're not out there reading the magazines or the trades on LinkedIn, or have some Google alerts, then you're gonna be finding out about it too late.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, look, I think that's a really, really good lesson there. It doesn't matter what's going to happen to the market. People are still going to need to buy homes, and your loan officers need to be having those conversations with those borrowers. And so, as a marketer, it's enabling the loan officer to have those conversations in a purchase environment. And then, of course, there's all the other needs for a mortgage when it comes to like refis and cash outs. And the interest rate might prevent some of that right now in the borrower's mind, but it's your job
Sure.
to advise them when it makes sense for the borrower, right?
Yep.
So I don't think those needs are going to drastically change with a rate change. From what I'm seeing,
Exactly.
Well, so let's talk a little bit about your wheelhouse. Talk to me a little bit about some of your top performing channels right now, and we touched on influencer marketing, and I'd like to hear your approach to that. What are maybe your top three channels right now for kind of to really support the business in terms of marketing, and where you're putting a lot of your focus.
Sure. I think the top one, the number one, is usually that fire hydrant, right? Like you're trying to drink out of this fire hydrant or shut off the hose or whatever that analogy is, and you just have a lot of things here at Kind, where we've invested into the growth of the product offerings and things of that nature, but at a close second is the digital space, right? And when we talk about digital marketing, we automatically have pivoted to email. And now, while social media is its own segment today, when I was coming up in marketing, social media was all dumped into the same thing, right? And to me, I think it still is, because it's the journey that is created from the social world into your emails and the conversions and all of that fun stuff. But social media is definitely, for a company like Kind, who is just completely changing the narrative, is doing it differently, right? Not to say that other mortgage companies aren't on social media, but our secret sauce, which isn't really a secret at all, is doing it better, right? um, Being different, being individual, being kind. We've seen a lot of success, and you can talk about your partners like testimonial review platforms like Experience and things like that. Um, the number one decision making, I feel like, is for a consumer is the difference, right? Who's doing it better? Who's doing it different? And some of the biggest mortgage companies in America, they've they've paved the way for us to be able to do things differently,
Hmm.
from a regulatory perspective and things like that. And I should always say, make sure you follow your PMPs, right? But
Yeah.
um, But so for us, social media influencing is a good deal. It's you know I had this conversation yesterday with someone, and it's like most brands, most mortgage companies want to go out there and talk about themselves, and rightfully so, right? Like we want to be well known, we want to have a brand, and sometimes you just haven't earned that right. You just haven't.
Hmm.
Um, but you have to go back to the drawing board and say, why are we creating this content? Why are we putting out into the digital world? It's for the consumer. Now, the consumers, if you have to think about it, like I wish mortgage marketers or just mortgage folks could just erase everything they've ever known about mortgage and be an actual consumer, right?
Hmm.
I feed off of mortgage. A lot of the folks that we've mentioned through this call, we love mortgage, we love finance, we love the housing and real estate. But the average consumer doesn't, right? That the larger audience is millions of people don't really care until they care. And so, mixing up your social media, your content, your emails, your drips, whatever, to be a myriad and probably 90% not mortgage related. So what are you left with? Right? If you're not talking about mortgage, what are you truly even left with, right? I've heard of folks talking about, hey, I'm going to go on social media and bake a cake. And guess what? That person, that loan officer, that mortgage professional that has that Instagram that created the reel and them baking a cake probably got more views on that reel than any of their other stuff, right? Combined, probably.
It's funny how that works, right?
Yeah, it's a different world, right? We are at the mercy of the audience, and the audience would much rather see, I don't know. There's a lot of popular videos out there, dance moves, right? For example, and so, being a thought leader isn't just, going out there and talking about mortgage. Our founder, our CEO, if you haven't followed him, Glenn Stearns, he's been in the industry for, a number of years, led some pretty large organizations, TV celebrity, an undercover billionaire. But, his personal, he's a thought leader, right? And he's earned that, through the years, through the connections he's made, and so forth and so on. But his success isn't just talking about, he does financial tips. He's, how people are interested. How did you become successful, right? As a loan officer, or any thought leader that might be out on social media, being showcasing your career is probably as important as the last home you closed on, you funded, right?
Hmm.
We put a lot more weight on, hey, this is what the review was, help this happy homeowner. But in your market, they're also looking at the experience factor, right? And how you are helping the community, how you are passionate about your business. Because I've seen, like, have you ever seen those guys that get in the haircuts, and they'll have like an Instagram page, and they're just like, this 10-second video clip of someone cutting someone's hair is like, I love what I do, it's awesome. And I was like, I have no desire to become a barber, right? I don't know why I
Yep.
just watched it, but it was awesome because he's like, hey, I've been cutting hair for 10 years and now I have 10 locations. They want to hear the good pieces, because I feel like all of mainstream media, all of social media, really gravitates to the sad, the unhappy, and the bad. And the mortgages business today is that sad and happy, unknown, and scary, and fear, right? So add that other value piece into it. You don't want to just make everything so happy, happy, but you have to tell the truth that there are some good things happening.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you got to get excited about buying a home. It's one of the biggest purchases of your life. It's life changing, right? A lot of it is the majority of people's retirement for the rest of their lives. They'll use it to fund their kids' schools, get out a credit card, all kinds of stuff, right?
Hmm.
Um, so, I mean, I actually think it's really important to focus on that as opposed to the negativity of a high rate environment or anything along those lines. Well, cool. So, you mentioned Glenn Stearns and his popularity and his incredible success. But we were talking earlier. You want to tell the story of his last 6 weeks and some of the growth that you've seen and some stuff that's gone viral. I mean, that's awesome what you shared with me.
Yeah, I mean, he's gone from 30 something thousand. I apologize. I can start that part over. Um, about 30,000 followers to almost a quarter million followers in like the last 6 weeks, and it's figuring out what works. Now, this is the secret sauce of it all. We as marketers are trained to do A/B testing on certain things. We test our, I don't know, our email campaigns and our journeys and things of that nature. But how in tune are you with your social media? Now, a lot of organizations have an entire social media department. They're doing paid, they're doing earned, they're doing all this stuff. But most organizations don't, right? And so, are you truly one creating that content calendar just to post for the sake of posting to the same 500 people that follow you? Or are you posting for the sake of posting that the 500 people that follow you are going to share it out to the masses, right? Are
I
going to
I agree.
comment and engage with it. And that's where your
So,
analytics go through the roof.
So I think that's the hard thing that a lot of marketers, especially with social media marketing, have a huge problem with, is that if you get someone who's really influential, they know that they put a lot of thought and it's got to be original, and they can't just hand over that posting to somebody
Mhm.
else because the moment someone who's following you sniffs that it's some kind of automated canned message that's being put out there, you will lose your viewership interest very quickly. So how do
Mhm.
you do that as a marketer? Like, how do you keep it, and how do you do it at scale when you've got an organization with a couple hundred loan
Well,
officers?
but hey, and here's the thing, right? So from a brand, from a company perspective, you know, most mortgage marketers are faced with, hey, is this going to go? We got to get it through compliance. Is it going to be approved? Right? There's this step that exists in the mortgage space. So it also then creates this speed to post, kind of hard to do. So first step is really going back and really creating the PMPs to mirror what the technology and what's available to you today. Because if I were to use a PMP that I was at like 3 companies ago or whatever, while we thought we were ahead of the curve, is like, oh, we've got social media covered, legal and compliance understands it. Well, here comes reels, right? Here comes IGTV, here comes stories, and TikTok is a new platform which didn't even really a thing 2 3 years ago. So making sure that you've covered that basis so you can get speed to posting, you know uh, kind of solve for. The next piece is, you know most algorithms out there on social media, especially on reels and Instagram and things like that, um, state that you should be posting 5 to 7 times a day. Can you imagine posting 5 to 7 times a day? One, as a marketer, there's a lot of design that goes into it, messaging, just thought, right? So you got to be working in advance. But we don't have that luxury in mortgage right now. Uh, what's hot today is not hot tomorrow, and what's going to resonate with the audience is not going to always resonate for the next week, right? So you have to be able to create on the fly. So creating those mechanisms. Now, one thing interesting I was talking to another group yesterday about was, you go to a mortgage company today on social media, and we're guilty of this as well, right? You go in, all you see is the logo, all you see is the color.
Hmm.
Your social media audience, especially on places like Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat, that are probably the hottest platforms right now, are your audience wants to be not sold to. Your audience wants to be, you have to take that subtle approach. If every single graphic on your post, on your feed or whatever, is your pink color of your company, then they're going to be lost in that. It's very corporate, right?
Yeah, it's
uh,
interesting how marketing's changed like that, huh?
yeah, I
Like,
mean, the audience has changed. They got sick of it. So
yeah,
you got to try something different.
yeah. I mean, I would even it just changed in the last 10 years. I was working at a really big tech company that is in the photo printing space, in the B2B and B2C, and the focus was putting out a lot of just kind of your classic ad kind of copy to get, very salesy,
Hmm.
and now that does not work anymore. People don't, like, literally are trained to like go right past it. You know what I mean? All the ad spots on the page, you go right past it. So it sounds the most effective mortgage marketers that I'm seeing are finding a way to actually get involved in the conversation, because then people
Exactly.
start trusting you, right? They start trusting you enough to be like, okay, let's see what this person is actually about.
Exactly. We're not. Yeah, there's a place for everything, right? So I appreciate the branding on, say, a platform like LinkedIn,
Yeah,
or sometimes even Twitter. But on Instagram and even now Facebook, and
and
TikTok as
TikTok.
well, you want
Yeah,
to feel like you said, part of the conversation. You want to be part of the audience. You don't want to stick out like a sore thumb that, hey, I'm the corporate brand that wants to sell to you, unless you've earned that right, right? Some of the bigger brands, Coca Cola's and the Home Depots and what have you. Like, I'm a Georgia Bulldog fan, and I've told you this, Richard, before, and everyone I've ever spoken to is, I like to throw in, I'm a Georgia Bulldog fan, right? So, um, but if I see a Georgia Bulldog icon on a post, I'm going to gravitate to it because it's a brand that I'm comfortable with. Most mortgage companies haven't earned that right. There are a few real estate companies that have earned that right notoriety, like the Sotheby's or someone like that, right? Because they're like, oh,
yeah,
that's so cool. I'm gonna probably be fed this luxurious home, right? Into my feed. So it's just, know what your audiences, and Instagram is, you can't, this is a blanket statement, but they're just normal people. And they don't, they're just normal people, and for the most part, and they don't want to be, marketed to. uh, if you've noticed, most platforms have given the consumer the ability to turn off ads, right?
yep,
Or vote out ads, and so, you're doing that without paying for it. So what they're going to do for you is unfollow you. That's the
yep.
only way they can turn you off.
Absolutely correct. Exactly correct. That's why you got to stay relevant. Um, so that's fantastic. Let me pivot here. Um, you had talked to me a little bit about tech, and you know, I thought you made a really good point when we were talking earlier. You were saying that, it's like things like Sales Boomerang and Mortgage Coach, technologies like that, great, they're best in class, but they are table stakes, meaning almost all of the lenders that are out there that are meaningful, right, are using these tools. And so it's not about that, right? It's about other things to be successful. So what are some of those other things? Like, there's no secret to success. Finding some new technology is not suddenly going to make you the winner of your marketplace, right? It's what are those other things?
It's a culmination. I think that let's look at the technology and the tools that were available 5 years ago versus today, or 10 years ago versus today. When I entered into the mortgage marketing realm, there was a couple of things. None of them really advanced, and they weren't being pushed to innovate. And then you fast forward to today, and you've got this myriad of tools, right? It's going through the due diligence of selecting the right tools, and I think that, you would probably agree here that most mortgage leaders, marketing leaders today, through other forums like Housing Wire, Total Expert, all these marketing platforms, or conversations that have kicked off, have kind of banded together, to have an open dialogue on what works. So now, where most mortgage marketers and organizations as a whole have been able to skip a lot of the guesswork out of it, right? We have this open dialogue where we can talk to someone to say, "Hey, how's this going for you?" Without you giving us insider secrets, how is
Yeah.
this platform going for you? And we rate, you know, um, you know this, but we rate on scalability, innovation, implementation, support. We have this checklist now where we didn't have even the vendors to even go talk to before, or partners to
Hmm.
go talk to before. So whether your focus is on data, whether it's on, and you have to lay foundations on every place. There's a place for it all.
Yep.
I've been at organizations in the past that had just way too many platforms of all sorts, duplicate
Yep.
of
Five
things.
CRMs,
Yeah, multiple CRMs or multiple data providers. Multiple data providers is probably not a horrible idea, right? Because you can get different things from different people. But
Yep.
there's people or the partners and the technology that's available today is night and day between now and 5 years ago, 10 years ago. But you also have to realize that the biggest, the baddest, the fastest lenders out there are using the best platforms. And when I say best, we're all in the same playing field today, right? I have access to what the biggest lender in America has access to.
Yep.
And it's not like crazy costs and things like that. It's one, do you internally have the bandwidth to launch this thing? Have you laid the foundation to do it? Are the other pieces of the puzzle in place? And being on the same playing field, partners are offering, hey, this is the recipe for success. But behind the scenes, you now have this platform to do the things that you need to do and make it your own, utilizing your brand, your messaging, and additional tactics. And so that's where I find it just completely intriguing, right? I don't have to, as a marketing
Yeah.
leader, I send a lot of demos. I love them because I'm like, wait, what? But what's interesting is that the largest mortgage company and the smallest mortgage company have access to the same thing. And that is a beautiful thing.
That is. I love it. I love that too. Well, look, Krish, we've gone long over our time, and I really thank you for it. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to have you on a bunch of webinars if you'll join us. I'd love to have you on with Dave and with Alex. Maybe we'll have an all-star panel and bring KB and a couple other folks on. But thanks so much for today. I appreciate it, man.
All right. I appreciate it, Richard.
Take care. Thanks for listening. If you like the podcast, please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe, and tell all your friends about the show. We at Sales Boomerang started this podcast to elevate the mortgage lending industry by sharing the kind of exclusive, insider knowledge from the successes and failures of the best of the best. The foundation of every successful lender is borrower retention. Sales Boomerang is the #1 fully automated borrower retention system in the industry. 1 in 2 of the biggest lending companies in the United States use Sales Boomerang to make sure they reach out to their borrowers when they need a loan, and more importantly, before their competitors do. If you want to learn more about Sales Boomerang, check us out at salesboomerang.com.